If you know you're on the panel, do you want to come forward and join us? Okay. Right, so we're going to use this microphone if we can. So we have here, so Ben is joining us again from Buro Happold Engineering to maybe give some advice if you haven't had a chance to talk to him so far. And then we have 3 venues from across our network who are doing amazing projects, hopefully inspire you as well. And we've organised this using the Theatre Green book appropriately. So we are talking about sustainable productions, and we have Nicky Wingfield here, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on at Chichester Festival Theatre around using the Theatre Green book in their Productions Festival 2022. And we have sustainable buildings. We're also being hosted here in the lovely Jackson Bay, who's undergone a capital project with sustainability at the heart of it. And then we have Alex Cook, who's doing this from the old fire station in Oxford, talking about involving and inspiring audiences to make greener decisions. So what we'll do, first each of you have a little chance to talk about what's going on there, and then we'll throw it out to the room for any thoughts or ideas or discussion points that we'd like to talk about. Right, I'll pass over. Why don't we just work down the line actually, that's possibly easier. There you go.
Hi everyone, I'm Warrick Griggs. I'm he him pronouns. My job is General Manager for Jackson's Lane. How long do you want me to talk for?
Just me, that's
cool. Okay. Tell me to shut up when you need to. So I have been working in venue management for theatres and art spaces regionally and in London for about 13 years now. Sustainability has been a key role for me for about 8 years across 3 different venues. So it's been quite a big part of my role for quite a while now. I started Jackson's Lane about 18 months ago when we were in the middle of the capital redevelopment project. So I wasn't involved in the design discussions, but I've been very heavily involved in kind of seeing the physical project happen. When I started, it was hard hat and high vis wherever you went in the building. There were very few walls, there were big patches with no ceilings. So it's been really good to see kind of the creation of this come a long way. There were 2 kind of key elements to the redevelopment project. It had been in discussion for about 10 years. One of them was accessibility. We are at the heart of it, we are an art centre for our community. And over the last 50 years that we've been operating as an organisation, we have become less and less accessible. So a big chunk of it was about becoming more accessible. And the other side of it, which I guess is more important today, was about the sustainability of the organisation. We were very fortunate to have a capital project underway, or starting, and sustainability is a really key part of that. I don't know how heavily the Theatre Green Book was used. Well, it wouldn't have been used during the design phase because it hadn't been released by then. But I think the architects and the design team involved took a lot of those kind of practices on board. So we've improved our insulation across the entire organisation. We've put double glazing in wherever we can. And we've really led into that lean phase of the buildings book to make sure that our heat and our energy loss and our everything that's lost through the building is as minimal as possible. And the next stage we're now looking at is us as an organisation, how we become more sustainable through our practices. And how we utilise the building and the services that we've got here to the best of our abilities. So we have a new ventilation system throughout the building, which allows heating as well, and we've taken decisions to go for an ambient heat temperature, but give rooms localised control over heat with thermostats, which means, I know someone said earlier about not having staff that want to go and turn radiators down. I am that pain in the arse manager that insists that we do that. But we've got localised control of heating in our spaces. Our ventilation systems are running on CO2. What's the word? Sensors. CO2 sensors. So ventilation only kicks in when there are people in the room, and the more people you have in the room, the more ventilation kicks in. A lot of our lighting around the building is all PIR sensors, so that we don't have lights left on. We've got quite a few automatic taps. Our urinals are all automatic. We've got dual flushes on all of the toilets. And these are all things that came as part of the capital project. So for anyone that was here before 2019, when the world shut down, you probably saw a very different venue. I guess that's kind of where we are at the moment. As I say, we're now focusing on our organisational practices and how we are better as a team. No worries.
It's a moment where I realise why we're backstage and not on the stage. Apologies, I do have a piece of paper. It's just so that I can refer to a few bits of information in case I forget it. So my name is Nicky. I work as production administrator down at Chichester Festival Theatre. We are in a rural location down in West Sussex. We have two auditoriums, one of 1,300 seats and one of about 300 seats. And we are in-house producers. We produce between 10 to 12 productions every year, mainly between April and November. And we also produce a Christmas show on our main stage, which the Youth Theatre take control of. In 2022, we decided to try and trial 3 shows in the 2022 season, using the Theatre Green Book baseline standards in production. We found at the first hurdle, when one of those shows lost its creative team very late in the day, and with time being of the essence when trying to make a Green Book show, we decided it wasn't fair to push them to do that, especially as we were very much learning the process ourselves. So we said we wouldn't aim for that, although we did continue to monitor something, because that was just useful for our records. And we carried on with the 2 shows at the Warrick Theatre, one of which is actually still in production now, so obviously we'll be monitoring that as it flux. The learnings from the shows. First of all, we started off by putting sustainability clauses into all our contracts. So that's every member of staff across the board. But most importantly, at Chichester, we use freelancers in all our creative roles. That includes our production managers, it also includes our supervisors, who play quite a large part when we're looking at how to make shows sustainable, and also our stage management teams. So we put green clauses into everybody's contract this season. And for those shows that we were piloting Greenwood, we put in specific clauses for creatives as to how we wanted them to go about using the Green Book standards, how we could help them to use the Green Book standards. And also with designers, we did put in a clause, it took us a long time to write over and over again, about copyright and how we could possibly use their items of set on a different production that may have a different design on it. We also, this is a controversial tool, but we did decide that because it was asking time and effort of certain creatives, that we would give them a small pay increase when we offered them the contract. We did this on a sliding percentage scale, so the people who really we felt had to have more time and energy for their job, we gave them percentage increase, so prop supervisors and production managers got the most. We then went down to designers and then some more of the creative team. We did this because it was a pilot and we are asking people to do things differently. And also, as I said earlier, we are very much learning the process, and so we are trying to help them, but we haven't got there yet. Ultimately, I think this is something we'd like to not have to do. We'd like Green to be across the board and nobody expected to get more money necessarily for specifically doing that. And I know other theatres are doing it other ways, so it would be good to hear how other people are managing. We introduced green card meetings, which I think I mentioned earlier, which were great at the start of the process. It really engaged people. Most people were very enthusiastic about it, and we came up with lots of ideas, lots of talk. We then went away, we sort of got into the practicalities, the logistics of the production, everything else started coming on top, and we've really experienced the fact that the green agenda has very slowly gone down the agenda as we've gone on the production process. So we've learned that having a green champion who can be on the show and stay with the show and be at all the meetings we have would be really, really helpful. At the moment, we're relying on goodwill from members of staff to try and be that person. They can't be across every show for every meeting. Also, the fact that we're monitoring things now, it would be great to be able to bring some of our figures into those meetings so that everybody knows exactly where they are at the different stages when we have production meetings. Monitoring was the massive thing for us. It was our moment of analysis paralysis, and it was who's going to do it, how are we going to do it, and when are we going to do it. Just to say the Green Book and their toolkit has been fantastically helpful. And we had a couple of members of staff who really jumped on board with this, and we started. What we're doing with monitoring, it's not ideal by any means. We can certainly improve pretty much everything about it, but we now have figures that we can measure against. And for us, it was a real release moment of, we can do this, we can input figures, and we can come up with things. And although it can be hugely improved, we can now move on, and we can use that to show everybody how we're doing, hopefully how we can improve that, but also in the areas that we're falling down, then at least it gives us something to go back up to. Briefly with the physical production, our biggest challenge is set building, because we don't build on site, so we have to use set builders elsewhere. We're having a lot of conversations with them about sustainability, and that's fantastic, but I feel it's something that is going to take time to embed into the process, especially with the challenges that everybody's facing at the moment. Also, with our season, some of the designers that we have at the front end of the season will be working on concept and working on models, and we haven't even got the designers contracted for the end of the season. So the idea of using modular sets is something that we're still trying to work out how to bring that across the entire season. Props and costumes, we have reordered all our props, and we now have a store where everything is tagged electronically, so we can tell where it is, when it's going out, who's using it, who's been hiring it. This has helped hugely, apart from the fact that it's much more economical. We can tell where things are and how many times they're used. It's the same with costumes as well. We've also opened our store up. We've always had a hire business, but we opened it up for an open day for prop supervisors to come and take a look. And that was really helpful for our hire, because people now come and use this a lot more, so hopefully we're encouraging people to reuse as well as doing it ourselves. And the same with costumes. It would be very easy to say that 100% of our costumes are recycled because they sit in our store. That's not really what it's about. So we now do a costume card every year, where costumes will get gifted to other local charities or organisations, and we also have costume sales, so we don't keep things just sitting there, and we're certainly going to move forward. Alexa sound is really tricky. On the production, the production was finished that we were trying the Green Book. We bought a few items for lighting, and at the moment we've got nowhere to put them, and we're not going to use them on the next show. However, obviously we have a generic lighting rig and a generic sound rig, which we use show in, show out. And since we had the capital funding project 6 years ago, we have increased LED lighting throughout the building and on stage. So it's really finding a way of monitoring that and using that for our figures. Finally, sorry, I'll stop talking in a second. Company and staff engagement is also really important. And we decided we had a small press night budget where we used to buy gifts for the companies for the 12 shows coming in, and press night cards. And we realised that it really wasn't sustainable at all. So we decided to plant a tree for production on their press night that the company can take ownership of. As I say, we're lucky we're on the Buro site. We have a virtual map that you can log on to, see what tree it is, which production it belongs to. And this has been really popular with companies. We tell them as soon as they come down to Chichester that that's what we're going to do. And actually one of the companies clubbed together and bought a tree for a member of the orchestra who had their first child while they were working with us. So it's just that engagement, how it did actually work. As I say, we're lucky to be in a rural location where you can do that. We've also put some of that budget into a wildflower meadow, and we're looking at some nature habitats this year. However, there is a massive flip side to that. I know, I think on the slide that Indigo showed earlier, it said 90, it's between 80 and 90% of our carbon footprint is down to audience travel, which is a whopping figure. Obviously, we're not going to sit back and go, well, that's our audience, it's nothing to do with that. They're our audience because they're coming to see our shows. So we decided to start off by partnering with a Bristol-based social enterprise team called Ecologi. And how this works is that when you go onto our website, you buy your ticket and it lands in the basket, it takes us onto another page, and on that page you can buy your ice cream in a recyclable tub, but you can also offset your audience travel for that show or for the number of shows you're coming to see. We have a minimum donation of £1, you can increase that if you want to, and again that will take you to a link to a virtual website where you can see where that money is going. Ecologi, they plant forests and support reusable energy initiatives worldwide. Last year we planted 29,000 trees and we made 818 tonnes of carbon reduction. Now, we realise this is very, very much a communication tool while we try to find longer-term solutions. This isn't the answer, but I think it's really, everybody's been saying that it's really important to be able to message to our audiences what matters to us, and I'm sure it also matters to a lot of them. So finishing up, has our trial of green book been successful? In terms of figures, we shamefully only got to 20% of production assets sourced from reused and recycled materials, so obviously there's a huge improvement there. We can make that. We got to about 78% of production assets reused and repurposed. So there's a lot of room for learning and improvement. But we do think it's been 100% successful in starting the conversations and making the initial steps towards a more sustainable and environmentally kind practice.
I'm from Old Fire Station in Oxford. We're a small arts centre in the city centre, so no parking. So we try and encourage people to use as much as possible. I'm here to talk to you about engaging audiences and artists. We find it really hard. I don't know if anyone else finds it really hard talking about everything we're doing. I say it gives me the ick, because you end up sounding quite smug and holier than thou, I think. Or at least that's what I feel like I sound when we're like, yes, and we've changed our lighting in our offices so it's LED, and we've done this and we've done that. And I'm like, God. It just sound like I know, like I think I know everything. And I'm saying how amazing we are, when actually we don't feel like we're that amazing, because there's always more that you can be doing. So we decided to think about, well, firstly, John asked me to write a blog post about what we're doing, and then I wrote a blog post about how difficult it is to talk about what we're doing. And weirdly, that really resonated with our audiences, so I sent it out to our audiences, and I had so many emails in response saying, this is great, I love that you're doing this, we had no idea that the old fire station was doing anything about the climate crisis. So that has made us a lot bolder. Audiences are really interested, and they're interested in having a dialogue. We're trying to programme more work about climate change, which is having kind of mixed results. So visual arts, yes, absolutely. People are really interested, they want to come in and have a look at it. Performance, no. In my experience, no one wants to come and see work about climate change because they don't want to be reminded about the fact that the Earth is dying. In my experience, tell me if you've had different experiences in your art centre. There was no small
No.
No.
No one wants sale.
No, no one wants it. And what we've been trying to do as well is talk to artists about it, which is where we found that really, really difficult, because it's a difficult time for venues, it's an even more difficult time for artists. How can we turn around to them and say, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do the other? So we've piloted a programme where we're asking every company in a season to make one green promise about their show, which could be banning single-use plastic in the rehearsal room, it could be deciding we're going to second-hand source every single costume, it could be we're going to recycle the set, it could be we're going to travel everywhere by public transport. So we've asked them to. We haven't had many replies yet, but we're reminding people, and I think the difficult thing is it can feel to you like you're being smug, and it can sound like no one's listening, but do you have to keep talking about it, otherwise people will forget, and there's lots of things now that we take for granted that probably when people started talking about them, no one was thinking about them. So I think we just have to keep going, we have to keep this dialogue with audiences. An audience member came in the other day to tell me that climate change is all made up, and it's a myth created by the media, and I wouldn't understand what she was saying anyway because I've been brainwashed. So that was interesting. So opening up a dialogue can result in some very interesting dialogue. But I went to a talk, a Zoom talk with an academic called Ashley Minns, who said something that I found really inspirational actually in terms of how we talk to our audiences. And he said you have to keep it local if possible, and you have to talk about things people care about. So if you say to a child, the Amazon rainforest is getting chopped down and it's dying, a British child who doesn't understand what the Amazon rainforest is really, has never been, can't understand anything so massive, that's not going to have much of an impact. But if you say to them, your local park is at risk because of climate change, the grass, look at the grass, it's dying, look at this and the other, look at the tarmac, it's melting because of the heat, and that's because of climate change, that is something that they can understand. So you approach what people love. Do they love wine? Great. How is wine affected by the climate crisis? Do they love chocolate? How is chocolate affected by the climate crisis? So we are approaching things locally, we're thinking about what people love, and we're trying to make changes that they will understand and that they can see and are tangible. So that's us. And if anyone sees any really good climate change work that people want to come and see, please send it to me.
I suppose just a couple of reflection points as you were talking there, some amazing ideas. And I guess this is part of this network of events, isn't it, to steal each other's ideas. But if any of you have got an old building, this is a really good example of what can be done. And I was just talking to Warrick earlier, they've managed to get some insulation in this roof. There's a little manhole up here somewhere, and someone's gone in and filled it with insulation. Brilliant. You know, I looked up and thought there's no way you can get insulation up there. You can, and it probably makes a massive difference. And then these windows, because these ones are double glazed, and yeah, both double glazed, and they look, you know, as good as the originals. So definitely doable in terms of practical implementations. I suppose one thing that I was reflecting on is although this building's had an enormous amount of money thrown at it, it's not zero carbon, I would value. Well, we've got a DCB, so which is amazing. And at the minute, offsets are a necessary thing if you want to be net zero now, even for a building like this. I mean, maybe when the grid is decarbonised in a few years, decades' time, this will then become net zero on site. But you know, you've got to imagine you've not got too many photovoltaic panels up on the roof at all because of the historic nature of the building. So you can't do it on site. You have to offset at the minute, even for a building like this. But yeah, great example for many others. On the productions point, Nicky, I thought it's another great example of just giving it a go, and it doesn't matter if you fail, right? You will learn more through failure and just testing it each time and improving each time. So I thought that was really good. And one thing that reminded me about contracts was something that cropped up that affects productions and operations, is that when new people start, when we look at our own contracts of our own employment within organisations, why does it not have a little sentence in there that says you are responsible for a small part of sustainability in your organisations? So something that could be easily changed that formalises sustainability within practices. Renting kit, great idea. Generally, renting anything is great for sustainability. On Alex's point, I think, yeah, lots of subliminal messaging we've heard is a really good idea. It's not necessarily talking to customers, it's maybe putting things on your website, newsletters, social media, stories that go out. Every channel you can possibly find have a media campaign. And then some of the marketing folk we met were talking a lot about storytelling. Like, it doesn't matter if that one story is just about the beehives or, you know, fancy shiny PPE kit on your roof. As long as you're telling stories and embracing people, that's really positive. And approaching local people, I quite like the idea. And telling stories that are local to people and more meaningful. Yeah, great examples.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for those fantastic case studies. I'm going to throw out the floor if anyone has any questions about any of those projects or any things they want to talk about, similar projects they're doing in their spaces. Yeah, one over there.
Hi, for Chichester, did you experience any resistance from creatives on the restrictions or limitations you might have put on them?
That was, sorry, did you experience any resistance from the creative teams around that? Yeah.
I think subliminally, possibly. I think everybody, genuinely everybody virtually was keen on the idea and loved the idea of the process. And would start to have conversations. One or two people possibly held back from that. But when it actually came down to doing it, it's, as I said, it slipped down the scale of importance for them. I mean, there are great things and there are good points to having freelance creatives because they're across the industry, they're visiting other theatres. It's easy for them to transport sustainable ideas around and for them to come and tell us what other theatres are doing and hopefully we can take on that best practice and possibly even vice versa. But by the same score, the same people are not in our building for that long, they're not that engaged in what else we're doing across the building because they haven't got the time or the energy or the brain space to do that. So I think the creative teams are usually up for it, certainly at the beginning of the process, but I think it's up for us as a venue to try and push that, keep it at the top of the agenda for the whole time they're working with us. And then I think, like most of these things, the time scale is the one, and eventually I think it'll be up there and people will be doing it. But yeah, on the whole, it's positive, but realistically, I think everything else tends to turn over.
Fabulous. Any more questions? Yeah, Angela.
This is maybe for the state, but we have a long menu and we weren't able to put photovoltaic panels on the roof structure on it. And we ended up with a really good solution, rather similarly CO2 ventilation system. But it relies on cooler air outside to be brought into the building. So on some evenings, you have, in particular, you have warm air outside, which you can be in, and possibly something you're going to experience more of. That can be a bit of a problem, especially when you've got 200 plus 280 bodies in the space. And what we found is that we get a lot of, because we've had it fairly recently, refurbishment, we get a lot of anger about the fact that, the money was spent on the building and you haven't even got air conditioning. And I mean, in a way, I think we're sort of, the general population maybe hasn't reached the point whereby they realise that they're going to have to experience things not at perfect temperature all the time. That, if it's hot weather, you're going to be a bit warm. You can't expect to be at this permanent, comfortable state. And that is, I think, really quite a key issue for us because at the moment, I think, and with sort of football things happening in really hot countries in the middle of summer, where it's all going to be air conditioning. I mean, people just haven't got their head around this. And this seems to be like a key thing that we have to tackle. And I'm not quite sure. I mean, I explain, air conditioning, bad for the environment, but it doesn't actually go down terribly well. I just wonder whether anyone's thoughts on that.
I mean, my one thought or response is, it's the essentially a cultural change, a change of mindset that we all maybe should take a bit of responsibility for, and you trying to explain the situation and why you've not got air conditioning, it might maybe seem fruitless, but actually it's really important to try and communicate that. And we had similar ideas where, you know, instead of above, say, the thermostat on the wall, there'd be a little messaging piece that says it's a little bit cooler for this reason, or we don't have air conditioning for this reason. And it's just an extra bit of information that you could display and share with people. But yeah, I think mindset changing is definitely going to take time. It will happen, and I think the younger generation stats were emphasising that it will happen with time. But I think, you know, we should all take a bit of responsibility for helping it along a bit.
So the first theatre I worked at when I came to London about 11 years ago was a listed building in central London, and an audience member said to me after a show one night, it was brilliant, but I couldn't enjoy it because it was too hot in the auditorium. You should have air conditioning in the auditorium. Every theatre at home, you know, my local theatre has air conditioning, why don't you? And I said, okay. I said, well, we're a listed building in central London, right? It's never going to happen. I said, where's your local theatre? And it was a new build theatre in South Africa. And I was like, well, yeah, no wonder you guys have got air conditioning. But that's come up more and more since then, and it's now, we probably get it weekly with classes in our studios, which are, so if anyone's not aware, the ventilation system we have essentially draws fresh air in based on the number of people that are in the space, and it heats it to an ambient temperature. We're set at 18 degrees. So the space will always maintain about 18 degrees, give or take a few. But if it's 23 degrees outside, the heating turns off and it just pumps 23 degrees air in. And the more people you have in, the more air it pumps in to keep fresh air in. But that obviously makes it a little hotter. So yeah, there is very little we can do. We have the same challenge. We explain to our audiences and our venue users, it's bad for the environment. It's so costly to install and then to run. It's just not feasible. We have a lot of fans. You can see one of our lovely big fans there. So all of our studios have fans which we'll use to give an impression of circulated air in the studios, but that's kind of all we can do. The other big problem that I'm sure we all face is the theatre. If you've got a tech day and a dress run and an opening night and you've had theatre lights on for 12 hours, that place is hot and no air conditioning will chill that down. So yeah, I think it's a lifestyle change that we all need to adapt to. We can put layers on in the winter and we can take them off in the summer to an extent. leave one layer over there.
Fantastic, yeah, brilliant.
Right, there's a suggestion really, just listening to people say they had these cupboards that they didn't use, or they were placing old lights in new. Would you like to maybe we could have a house freestyle and actually the other venues might have things that somebody else wanted to use? Because I feel the same behind.
I love that, yeah. As I say, we're building our new website, so I'm going to go on the Monday and say, can we build this into the website, please? I think that's a great idea.
On that topic, Oxford has a library of things, which I only just became aware of, which is where you pay £5 and you can borrow anything. So it's like, I need a strimmer, I'm not going to buy a strimmer to just do one thing, so I'm going to borrow it. So it might be worth looking if your local community has a library of things. So you may not have noticed like me, but it's been there for ages.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any final questions? Okay, well, well, thank you very much to all of our panel. It's been really helpful indeed. So if we give them another applause, please.